Hi friends, good afternoon everyone. So in this video, we are going to talk about some more Linux concepts. If you see my Linux playlist, we have talked about some basic things like how to create a server and how to spin up the server in Oracle VirtualBox using Vagrant. And if you see my AWS, you can see how can you create a Linux server in AWS Cloud. So here, what we are going to do is we will continue with the rest of the Linux concepts by starting a server in AWS. So this time I'm going to choose a Red Hat server, right? So let me go for instances and I'm going to click on launch instance. And this launch instance, I'm going to select Red Hat server. So, but here guys, you have to remember one thing. You select Red Hat, or you can take a CentOS machine from Marketplace, or you can directly take Amazon Linux. Both are same. So Amazon Linux, Red Hat, and CentOS. So all these operating systems will work on Fedora flavored operating system, right? So here you can select either Amazon Linux or Red Hat. So I'm going to click on Red Hat, right? So of course, Red Hat is not an enterprise Linux, which is, Red Hat is not an open source Linux, but in AWS, you can see that you have Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9 version VM, which is free tier eligible. So the people, those who are having free tier account, absolutely they can use this Red Hat server, right? So here I'm going to take 64-bit and I'm taking T2 micro, which is again a free tier eligible server. And I'm going to take a key pair, which acts as a password for logging into instance by using SSH. So here I can either select the existing key pair or else you can create a key pair, click on create key pair and give a name to the key pair saying something like test Red Hat. Okay, so I have given a name to this particular PEM key, a key pair, which is test Red Hat. So it is either our option, we can use PEM extension or PPK. If you are using PuTTY in your laptop, you can select PPK. If you are using Git Bash or any other terminal, then you can use PEM key. So I have both. I can use PEM key as well as PPK. So here I'm going to select PEM key so that it makes some easy to connect to the server by using my Git Bash. Okay, so I have selected PEM key and click on create key pair. So it will download a key pair. So guys, let me tell you what happens when this key pair is downloaded. So that when I'm calling key pair, that means a pair of keys. That means AWS is going to generate two keys for you. So one is public, the other one is private. So AWS will keep one key with it and it will give you the public key, the private key, sorry, which you can access and you can authenticate the server. So here, what is the process when you are using this PEM key? How AWS is going to know, okay, this is the respective PEM key to that server because it has another pair of key. It is having another key in that particular pair that you have generated, and it is going to map those two keys, right? So then you are able to log into the server. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I have generated test Red Hat and you can either select a networking. So you have a default VPC. You can also use your VPC, which is created by you. Okay, so here I'm going to take either of the subnets. So by default, it was launched in any of the subnet, but let me select US East 1A. So guys, I have talked about subnets in my previous video. You can go there. Right? So enable public IP, which is you have to access your server through the internet so that you are taking enable public IP, right? So you have two options here, the security groups, which acts as a firewall for the server, and it is the place where you can restrict the traffic with a known IP address. You have to whitelist the IP address in security groups. Remember, I'm not using a keyword called blacklisting. I'm using a keyword called whitelisting, right? So here, what I'm going to do is What do you mean by let me tell you one thing. What do you mean by difference between whitelisting and blacklisting? So whitelisting is a process of allowing the known IP addresses, right? Blacklisting is process of blocking the known IP addresses, right? So if you want to block particular IP address to log in into the server, then you have to blacklist. And if you want to allow only one particular server into the only one particular IP address into the server, then that is called whitelisting. So guys, remember, if you want to whitelist one particular traffic in that particular CIDR block, you have to use security group. So I'm selecting a create security group. I can give a name to the security group. So connect to Linux server. I'm going to give the same name over here. So or else you can keep description as it is and scroll down. You have SSH protocol, which is enabled. If you are not installing any packages in your EC2 mission, better you keep SSH and don't add any additional security group rules. Okay, so let me connect to my instance. So instead of that, see what I'm going to do here. I'm not going to use this instance only for teaching you Linux. I may use this instance for teaching some other software for in another video. So for that reason, I'm going to add a rule here saying all traffic. That means I'm going to allow traffic from anywhere in the world. Of course, it's not a best practice. AWS itself, it is saying the rules with the source or 00 allow IP address to access your instance. We recommend setting security group rules to allow access from only the known IP addresses. Here you have to keep this mind, the keyword allow. You are allowing only known IP addresses. That means you are whitelisting the IP addresses. Okay, so that's fine. We are done with adding our security configuration. Okay, so in the configuration of storage, you can, by default, Red Hat servers will claim 10 GB of the memory in your AWS account, right? So which you have to keep that in mind. If you want to add excess volume, you can add it by clicking on volume, or else you can increase the volume vertically by increasing the number over here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I have selected the PEM key, I have configured the security groups, I have configured the storage, I have configured the networking things, so everything. Okay, so here I'm going to click on launch instance. So when you click on launch instance, AWS will create the instance by initializing the request. So if you see the launch log here, you have series of actions: initializing the request, creating security groups, creating security group rules, and launch initiation. So 4 stages the instance will be getting launched. So after completing this, the instance will undergo with a lot of stages over here. You can see the status check, right? So the status check will undergo with lot of status checking process. So that means if you see here, you have a keyword called initialization, right? The system check where your EC2 hardware is running. So here you are seeing a virtual server, right? So this virtual server could be running in one of the Amazon data center where underlying hardware, the bare metal is running over there. So the underlying hardware check is going to have here once the initialization is completed. And not only that, whatever the VM that you have spinned up, even that check will also have to pass if you want your server to use all the features in Linux, right? Of course, we can connect to the server right away. So you can select the server or click on the instance ID, which will basically help you to log into that particular server. Click on the instance ID, you can click on connect, or else what I'm going to do is I have created a PEM key, right? So I'm going to select IP, public IP address. I'll go to the bash terminal, right? I will click on exit. I'll come out of the server. This is a Vagrant server which I have spin up. So I will be going into the downloads folder, and what I'm going to do is SSH-I, and I'm going to give test. So I have a lot of keys here. What could be the name I have given? Test Red Hat, right? So I'm going to select this PEM key, and I am going to use the user called EC2-user, because keep that in mind, always Red Hat servers uses a default username EC2-user, and paste your IP address over here, right? Hit enter, so your server will be logged in. So it is first time it is asking confirmation to add your key into the host key, the known hosts, and enter. So now you are inside the Red Hat server. You will be able to see that the user with Red Hat EC2 user, and the IP address is this. This is a private IP. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is clear the screen, and you can execute normal Linux command inside the server. So guys, I hope you're clear about creating a server in AWS and connecting to that particular server. So now let's jump into exact Linux topic. So in today's video, in last video, we have discussed about file management in Linux. How can you create, how can you change the permissions for the directories and all the stuff. So in this video, so we can see how can you create a user, how can you add a user into that particular group. So all these things we can see now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I will use the basic command that we are going to do. First command is pwd, the present working directory. I'm inside EC2 user directory. So I will use who am I. So I'm EC2 user. Okay, so after that, what I'm going to do is sudo add user, and I'm going to give the name of the user should be DevOps, right? So I'm going to give DevOps user, right? So I'm going to set password for this user by using a command called sudo passwd DevOps. Okay, right? So you can give your custom password over here. Okay, so I recommend setting up a strong password for your Linux box. So now you have seen two commands, adding user and changing password for the user. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a command which will help you to add user to one particular group. Okay, so now what I can do. So use a sudo user mod, which is user mod, user modification. You can give switches -a stands for adding the user, and capital G stands for adding user into the group. So here initially you have to mention the group name, that is root. Okay, so I'm going to add the user DevOps into root group. Okay, so now we have user which is added into DevOps root group. So now